Hello guys, and welcome to another Couchisode. We hope that you had a good week, and we're back at it with some new old games to talk about. We'll talk about one of the very acclaimed Superbike games from Sega.
We'll also have farming experiences from the 90s,
as well as catching world-renowned thieves. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back with you. Hello guys, welcome once again. So we're going to jump right onto it with the first game that we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about Manix TT Superbike from 1995. This was for the arcades and was developed and published by Sega AM3 and AM4 Studios.
It was a cool
So
one.
Manix TT, yes, it was. The Manix TT was Superbike. Manix TT Superbike was an arcade racer with the Superbike team that sought to capture the experience of the demanding motorcycle event called the Isle of Man TT. So it was obvious that after the successes of Daytona USA in 1993 and Sega Rally Championship in 94, Sega wanted to keep the ball rolling, and thus Manix TT Superbike was actually born. While keeping the graphical side of things to be nothing less than astonishing, Sega wanted to create a unique arcade experience that would bring players the sensation of realism. So the cabinet itself for this arcade game for Manix TT Superbike was not very new though. It was heavily inspired on the Super Hang-On one with slight modifications. So you had a bike-shaped seat that you could tilt either left or right in order to move in both directions. The player could use both the feet on the floor to tilt the bike or keep his feet on the seat and use the weight to turn from one side to the other. So gameplay-wise, it had a selection of two tracks, one created specifically for the game itself called Laxi Coast. This was an easier one, and a harder one based on the aforementioned Isle of Man TT called the TT course. In what regards the bikes, you only have one single Honda based on the RVF 750 TC45 model. The game difficulty can also be increased by selecting manual transmission instead of automatic. And as it's usual in this arcade-style racing, we'll start at the back of a total of 8 positions where we have to win the race in 3 laps. Additionally, there is a timer that will refresh as you hit numerous checkpoints along the way. Now, talking about my personal experience about this game, it was very limited in the arcades and more on the Sega Saturn port that came out on 1997. So I didn't actually play this on the arcades that much. And when I played this in the Saturn, my cousin actually had a Sega arcade stick and that's how I played it for most of the time. And I can't really say that the game mechanics were that good. And I think this is one of the usual issues that when we had arcade ports to home consoles, some of them are really great, but some others actually, suffer from some details. The turning, for example, especially on the arcade stick, it felt really off. And the reason is since the turning is actually progressive, if you would hold the stick to one direction for too long, the bike would actually completely turn in one of that direction, and it would stay almost 90 degrees in a 90-degree orientation perpendicular to the track. And that was really annoying and got me doing a lot of steering correction, which was for me one of the common issues or problems of this game. And then there was the AI. I mean, while, for example, when you're going uphill, your bike slows down, or when you curb, you see that some decrease of speed. The AI opponents simply don't get affected by this. And I would find myself on multiple occasions on going uphill and seeing the AI opponents just flying right by myself. And this was actually the experience of the game in arcade mode. Now, fortunately, on the Sega Saturn version, there was a Saturn mode which could give us different bikes with different accelerations and speed, but they were all based on the same bike model with a slight change in the textures or colors, so nothing really different there. The tracks, however, would remain exactly the same, just Laxi Coast and TT, but you had the two mirror modes where you can do the tracks actually backwards. So this was kind of like very frequently back in this type of ports of arcade games into the consoles. So overall, Manix TT, excels for its great graphics for its period, and it's capable of keeping a solid 30 frames per second, which gives a great sensation of speed on the game, actually. And although I would not personally consider this a great Sega arcade game, remarkably, the hardcore Sega fans still hold Manix TT as one of one of its great games, despite its shortcomings regarding to the content of the game in general.
It was fun in the arcades. Can tell you that.
It was, and I think it was very based on, or at least it captured the experience of the Super Hang-On that we had with the bikes, going left and right and stuff like that. And I did play those on the arcades, even Super Hang-On. But definitely, I think it excels really on the graphical side, and I think Sega did a really great job here on achieving this almost realism from the graphical side. But again, I think that the controls, that the downsides of this game are really the control mechanisms and the lack of content, because that was it. Even in the arcades, after you finish the track that you would selected, if you win, you could even win first place. That was it. The game would end there. Then probably you would have your name on a high scores list of the arcade machine.
But, and they were still missing that cricket sound in the end, like nothing else happened.
Exactly. Anyways, what about you, Blade? What do you have for us today?
Okay, I have a nice one. I have a soccer management game or football management game, whatever you want to call it. And it's a funny old video game.
You're not going to talk about Championship Manager, though, are you?
No, I'm going to talk about It's a Funny Old Video Game. Caught you there.
I have no idea what game you're talking about.
That's the name of the game. It's called It's a Funny Old Video Game. These guys were visionaries, and they knew this game was funny, and it would be mentioned way in the future. That's why they called it It's a Funny Old Video Game. See? Guys,
so they knew what was coming up, right?
No, but seriously, this was a fun game that came in 96 for Windows 3.11 still. Windows 95 was already out, but it came out for Windows 3.11. And it was a management game, not the likes of Championship Manager or On the Ball, for instance. This was rather simpler. A lot of the stuff you did in this game wasn't really impactful in what you did. But it was just fun. It had some funny cartoons. You even had the cheerleading part where the first cheerleader you had was actually a guy with a big mustache dressed as a cheerleader. It was funny. The game was actually funny. The referees in the games were actually weird. You could have Frankenstein refereeing a game. And the only thing you would see in the game was that you saw the field and the ball would just jump from one side to the other. At some point it would go inside a goal and you would score a goal. You didn't see the players, you didn't see anything. You just see a ball moving and jumping on the field from one side to the other. But the game was cool. You could actually buy players, trade players with other teams. You could improve your stadium. You could deal with sponsors. You had a lot you could do in this game. But the magic in it was the cartoons and the environment. It was just silly and fun. If you wanted the real challenging experience, this wasn't the game. Get Championship Manager, get anything else. If you want to have just a bit of fun and have a management game that involves football, try this one. It's actually a fun game. Like the name says, it's a funny old video game. And it's awesome. Just try it out. I just had to mention this one because this one is a gem of a game.
I have to say I don't know that game, but you just mentioned one that I did play a lot, which is called On the Ball. And now that you remembered me about it, I'm gonna have to play that game because I really loved On the Ball, and I haven't played it in a while.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story about On the Ball. I once played with Manchester United in a game, and I think it was on the third or the fourth week of the game. We had a trip to play in Europe, and you actually got a message that the whole team died in a plane crash. And I was like, what?
I never actually seen that on the game. I didn't know that was
it happened.
Oh, God. So
we had to play with the youth players for the rest of the season, and all the team died in a plane crash.
I had never experienced that. I gotta try the game just to kill the whole team. I'll do it just to kill the whole team.
Yeah.
To see the experience.
It only happened once, but it was like, what the hell happened here? Weird.
Gotta check that one out. Anyways, I'm gonna bring now another game, and obviously I have always to give a little bit of a background introduction and the story for this. So there was one day I was thinking about about this, and it was just a couple of days ago, or maybe a couple of weeks ago. And everybody knows that I'm a big fan of point and click adventures. I mean, that's already known here in the channel. And I didn't actually remember what was the first game that I played of this genre. Like what exactly had triggered me to like this type of games. And I was, I spent some time thinking about it. And I remember that, and I was thinking about the computers that I touched, not only mine, but I remember that when I was in middle school, in the library, there was a couple of computers there, and I mean, mostly, people would use them for, research purposes, but the actual reality was that people will just, or kids would use them to play games.
Yeah.
And I remember that on this computer, I would spend a lot of time playing Scorched Earth. You remember the tank game? And also the Gorilla Bass, the Bass Gorillas or whatever. I mean, it was a game done in BASIC.
So addictive.
But, at some point, I started seeing some kids there playing a point-and-click game. And which game was this? So this game was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego from 1985. And this was for PC and was developed and published by Broderbund Software.
Yeah.
Now, I remember quite well that these were 286 computers, and there was not much of a powerhouse there, but it was more than enough to play this 1985 classic. The objective is quite simple, and as the title says, you need to find one of the greatest thieves of all times called Carmen Sandiego. So to do this, you travel around the world capitals, and upon arriving, you'd ask around locals in order to get some clues on the whereabouts of Carmen and her associates. So eventually, after apprehending all the associates, you'd be put on a quest to find Carmen herself. When all the clues had been followed and you're on the right track to arrest Carmen Sandiego, you'd actually get via fax machine, there was a fax machine that you had on the screen, an arrest warrant to actually, apprehend Carmen. So yes, again, there's not much to say about it. It's a very simple game where at a later stage and after having a little bit of more knowledge of the gaming industry and how this type of games evolved, it really shows that this was the next level or the next step after the text-based the text-based adventure games that we saw in the early 80s. If you remember titles like Zork or Soft Porn Adventure from online systems that was later known as Sierra Entertainment. Yeah. So, and this is it. This is a very simple game. There is no moving around with your mouse. There is no complex animations, VGA graphics, or anything like that. You just have a set of options. You select from them, and you ask questions and get to Carmen. So that was it. And it was so amazing because you would actually have the opportunity of seeing some of the most beautiful world capitals. I can remember, for example, Egypt, Delhi. You could visit all these monuments just by following clues about to find Carmen. Yeah. This was actually later on introduced in Google, and if you actually go to Google, you can put where on earth is Carmen Sandiego, and that is a game on Google that uses Google Maps to play this game. You can actually play this online today. Well, not online as in the sense of multiplayer, but you can actually go to Google and play this game. Nice. It's actually amazing. It still follows the same, how can I say this? The whole gameplay experience of, back in 1985. The game itself had this series not only had games, but it had TV series, animated TV series that is, and this was basically educational, because while playing this game you would learn about capitals of the world, you'll learn about monuments of the world, some of the wonders of the world are actually there mentioned on this game. So again, this was the purpose of this, was being educational, while having a game where you're going to try to catch a thief. So for me, I think this was what triggered me into being such a big fan of point-and-click adventures today. And it's still a game that sometimes I just, pull up DOSBox and I, fire it up and I just play it because it's very short and it's very simple. But every time you play it, the clues and the events will change. So it's not linear. It's not that you finish it once, you'll actually have it again. So,
a cool one.
Give it a try, guys, because it's a purely based DOS game from 1985, but it's quite fun. And even if you have kids, try to put your kids playing this because it's an excellent learning experience. There's nothing wrong with this game whatsoever. There's no blood, killings, or anything like that. It's totally kid safe, and it's very, very, very educational.
Yeah, and it's fun.
So, Blade, what you have for us today then, as the last game that we're going to talk about?
Let's go farming.
Let's go farming. Yes, I have a feeling that I know which game you're going to talk about, but you go right ahead.
Do. We're going to dive right back into 1993 and talk about the Maxis Pearl called Sim Farm.
I knew it
was awesome. This was basically a spin-off of the original SimCity, where instead of building and managing a city, you'd build and manage a farm. It was cool. It was awesome. And it had a pleasant soundtrack for the time. I quite fondly remember this game and playing hours and hours on end on this one. Because you actually started small, building a small farm. You had the crops, you had the livestock. You could then go to the town and ask for them to improve some stuff in town so you'd get benefits in the farm. Like the airfield, so you could have the planes just dust their crops in the future. I remember you could actually take livestock and go to town with it and have a prized pig, for instance. And these small things made the game quite interesting. And then you just go back to the farm, you just build the dirt roads, have your tractors, have your crops just laying there. You could just tidy up everything just right and just hope that there weren't any tornadoes or no pests that would destroy anything. And I just remember that there was specifically one crop, a specific one. If you had the orange fields, you could build loads of them, and after 3 or 4 years, no more pests, nothing. They were immune to everything. They were immortal. If you looked at an orange tree there, it would say Highlander. It was immortal.
Oh. I usually would go by simpler crops. I mean, I remember fondly going for cotton, going for strawberries, going for corn, because these were kind of strawberries had an issue, but for example, corn and cotton were fairly easy to maintain. Cattle, on the other hand, I was terrible with cattle. I don't know why back then. I remember letting my cows die, and there was food there was everything, there was water, so I was always thinking about, what am I doing wrong? And that's one of the things that it's really beautiful about playing these games today at a later age, where you have the ability to comprehend what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when I was a kid, the knowledge of English was limited back then. So we're kind of like, seeing where we could go with that and experimenting.
We're just experimenting with the game and see what happens. Yeah. No, but I think most of the problems I had with the livestock in the game, it's probably what you had. That was probably having them to breed, and they would eventually die and not breed new cattle. And this was most of the problem, at least I had.
Yeah.
But this was actually a fun game, and I'm pretty sure you could have fun with this one still today.
And now coming to remember it, I think I actually know why my cattle the livestock was dying. I remember that I would do very small enclosures to put them. And they need help. Big, that was my mistake. Probably. God damn it. I got to play that game again and I got to fix it. I have to fix it.
Now, this was an awesome one. And I remember you had to build barns to get your gear safeguarded there. Like the trucks, or when you went to pick up oranges, for instance, you had to get everything in a barn or it would just get destroyed by the weather. This game was so awesome. I really need to pick this up again.
That's a really great realism. I mean, obviously, if you are picking up crops, you would not leave your crops outside,
exactly,
to the elements, right? I mean, you had to keep them. And that's those small details on these games from the early 90s, that are so good. And if we remember, for example, the story that we had here when we talked about Pizza Tycoon, about the selling the ice cream and the police issues and stuff like that, those little details, they really matter. They really matter. And that's what made these games so unique and so much fun to play back then.
Yeah, little details made the games awesome.
Is this available on GOG, like Sim Farm today?
I think you can still buy this in a collection on Amazon. I think it comes with Cement also, and Cement was so cool.
Cement, yeah. I didn't play that much Cement, but I gotta tell you that definitely it's one of those really fun. Really cool ones. And Maxis did a great job on these simulation games, and they definitely earned the prize of the best simulation games ever
released. They had so many. There's one I have to talk about eventually. That was Sim Tower. It was so cool.
Oh, that was so good. I
Yeah.
played that game so much. Well, okay.
Cool.
We're overextending. Anyways, guys, there's a lot of good games that we talked about here that we have to talk on the next, probably on the next Couchisode, or who knows.
Who knows?
But guys, you know how's the story? Yeah, you know how we usually say it. Leave a like if you like, leave a dislike if you didn't like. Consider subscribing to the channel. And guys, we'll see each other next week for another great Couchisode. So, game on.
Game on, everyone. Have fun and have a great week. Game on.